Whole by Jesus. Week, technically 3. In your booklet, it's going to say week 4. More on that later. But week 4 is the title. As we're continuing through this, I actually just saw that the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Huh. I totally planned that. I looked out years in advance and saw that was going to be, and we just placed this right on that month for that purpose. So, week 3, we're going to discuss relationships and different relationships that Jesus held and what that means. If I were to say relationships are some of the greatest parts of life, would you agree? If I were to conversely say great relationships are some of the most difficult parts of life, would you agree? Okay. But either way, relationships are important. Just this past week, we've been doing a job out in Perrinton. It's a tiny little thing. I don't know. For me, I live on the west side. The difference between Hilton and Hamlin is very different for me. It's a 10-ish minute drive, very different places. The difference between Perrinton and Penfield, they're the same place. Right, Keith? You live on the east side. Fairport, Webster. I mean, it's just one big, giant east side of Rochester, and the people over there are different than the people over here. Except for Keith. We love Keith. Just kidding. So we're starting a job over in Perrinton, and I've been working on it. It's this weird thing where the land owner, the building owner, owes the tenant a bathroom. They have to give the tenant a bathroom. So as part of the construction project, the tenant has to put in a bathroom. So they hired us to do that. That's the easy part. These buildings are set up that the basement level, the commercial space, and it's residential above that, these spaces are set up so that they're ready for anything that wants to go in there. They haven't even poured the concrete floor yet. So as I'm going through and I'm getting this job, I get it, we start working on it. But then I start to realize, as I'm building this, also the tenant is building out their gym. So at the same time, I'm working for somebody else, and then all the rest of the contractors are working for this guy, and there's 2 separate quote-unquote projects, but they're all intermixed together, and the reporting goes to different people, and there's different people in charge of the tenant's work, and there's different people in charge of my work. The guy that I report to lives in Buffalo, so he doesn't ever come out here. He's hard to get a hold of sometimes. And as we're going through this project, I realized that I probably should have done a little bit better job of ordering materials, and materials that I thought maybe I could find in stock in Home Depot or somewhere, and they're not. So I got a little bit delayed. Well, I ordered my floor, and then I forgot about the rubber baseboard, the little white piece that runs along your floors that covers up the ugly edge to your beautiful wall. I forgot to order this. And I was walking in with my prep as I was starting to clean out the floor, and their flooring guy was delivering their products. Of course, they remembered their baseboard. But as the guy got out of his truck, as I just happened to be walking in at the same time, I recognized him. I said, "David?" He's like, "I know you, but Josh." I was like, "Yeah. We played volleyball together years ago at Grace and Truth. We were not greatest of friends. He was a good friend of Ryan, the guy who runs it, and I just have experiences with him personally. Good Christian dude, used to live in Hilton. All good people come from Hilton and everywhere else." So I get my floor in, and I went up to the guy inside, and I said, "Dylan, why didn't you tell me David was delivering the floor?" He's like, "Well, I didn't know you knew David." So then comes the rubber base part. I forgot to order it. I notice that the flooring contractor that's not doing my part, but the other rest of the building, has a box of rubber base sitting right by their bathroom. So I called David and I said, David, I may or may not have forgotten to order my rubber base. One of two things. One, where did you buy it? Or two, the better option, do you have enough that I could maybe take 4 or 5 pieces and put in my bathroom? So he asked a quick question. Sure, go ahead. We got plenty. Great. Relationships. Now, if I had no idea who this guy was, I probably wouldn't have been as comfortable boldly calling and asking him for product. But also, he may or may not have known who I was, and he may not have given me any product. As a younger person in high school, I enjoy playing sports. In high school, I didn't play any sports. I did not play one school sport ever throughout school. And by the time I kind of had the idea of it would be fun to go play on the football team, or it would be fun to go play baseball or something, by the time I had that idea, it was around 11th grade, and I knew unless I am head and shoulders better than the rest of the players, I'm going to put in a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of work, and I'm not ever going to get to play in a game. Because I don't know anybody. I may know them from around school a little bit, but I have not gone through their system. I've not built any relationships. I've not shown who I can be, what my character is to these coaches. Because relationships are such the pivotal thing of our world. What's our mission as a church? There's a hint within the room. Our mission of the church is to be a living community of Jesus Christ. In order to be a community, it takes more than one person. In order for there to be more than one person, you have to be in relationship with other people. So how did Jesus do this? How did Jesus go through life and mix in with his relationships? Let's open to John chapter 21, 15 through 19. John 21, verses 15 to 19. I'll probably read a little bit extra. John 21, 15 to 19 says, After breakfast, Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? You've probably heard this passage before. Jesus asked Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, Peter replied, you know that I love you. Then feed my lambs. Jesus told him. Then he repeated the same question, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, Peter said, you know that I love you. Then take care of my sheep, Jesus said. A third time he asked him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt that Jesus would ask him this question a third time. He said, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said, then feed my sheep. I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you liked. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hand, and others will dress you and take you where you don't want to go. Jesus said this to him to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, follow me. As I read through this and you think, Jesus says to Peter, do you love me? I was asked to call someone this week just to check in on them. They had a rough day, and this person just wanted me to see how they were doing. So I called and I said, hey, how's it going? What's going on? So, I'm good. So I hung up and I said, great, glad to hear that. Actually, what I said is, so how's it going? And I said the same words, but my inflection changed. In this case, Jesus actually changes slight nuances of the words that doesn't translate very well to English. But I said the same words, and there was more of a pause. Yeah, well, this is happening. The same words over and over. Okay, but how are you really doing? When I listen to John Delaney online, and somebody calls in, he asks them a question, and often the first response is very superficial. Often the first response is a very locked and loaded answer. Here's what I always give up. And when he hears something that's like, that's not the real problem, he pushes on further. Okay, but what's the real problem? He pushes deeper. And he allows the person to really settle in. When I read through this with Peter, I think he's not just saying, okay, you've said the right thing, now let's go on and continue on our lives. He's pressing in and saying, Peter, do you really love me? Now let's also consider the context here. This is John 21. John 21 comes towards the very, very end of Jesus' life. So what has happened already now is Peter has denied Jesus, and Jesus knows. Jesus knows that there's this disconnection here. Jesus knows that there's a break in their relationship, and what he doesn't do is he doesn't just say, well, yeah, but now Peter's here, so let's just continue on as if nothing ever happened. He doesn't continue going forward and say, well, what's done is done. I don't need to work through it. I don't need to have the conversation. He goes directly to Peter. He knows that Peter betrayed him. He knows what happened. And he says to Peter, right in his two eyes, do you love me? I know that you denied even knowing who I am. I know that you ran as far away as you could in the moment when I needed you most. I know that there's a disrepair in our relationship here. Do you love me? And Peter has to look Jesus in the eyes and say, you know that I love you. He goes to this relationship, a very dear relationship. And again, we know what happens with Peter. We know that Peter goes on to build the church. But in this moment, a relationship that means so much to Jesus, he's intentional about seeking out Peter and repairing the relationship. Not just we'll move on, because when you just move on, you leave the broken pieces there. They come along with you. And when something else comes up in the next week or month or future, those broken pieces come right along with you. Jesus goes and he seeks to repair the relationships that he finds himself in. Jesus was in relationship with a lot of people. Last night we talked about different relationships. The mother of Jesus, Mary, he was in a good relationship with Lazarus. We know that Jesus wept over Lazarus. We talked about him last week. His cousin Lazarus and Martha and Mary. And we think about Martha and Mary for a quick second. The famous story is of Martha and Mary, and Jesus is in their house. Great friends, wonderful people. And there's two very different contrasts between Martha and Mary. Martha wants to make sure that her home looks beautiful, wants to make sure that all the food is prepared perfectly, wants to make sure everything is done well for the King, for Jesus. Mary, on the other hand, doesn't care about any of that. She's in awe of just the presence. She wants to be present with Jesus. And what Jesus doesn't say to Martha is he doesn't say, Martha, stop doing what you're doing and come over and sit at my feet. And he doesn't say to Mary, Mary, go help your sister make this meal. There's rightness in both. but not both exclusively. At times, we need to be present with friends and family. Not just constantly running around cleaning up the little things. If you came over to my house right now, we'd have to do a little quick clean. But I bet that a lot of people, if I went over to their house, you'd feel you have to do the same thing. We don't have to make everything perfectly presentable. What I desire more than seeing your beautiful, perfect home is I desire to see you. I desire to be in relationship with you. Matthew 14, second passage. A very well-known story. Jesus feeds the 5,000. As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. Ever been there? You're around crowds of people. You've been teaching all day. So you get in a boat to go off to be alone, to recuperate, to rest, to rebuild yourself up. Ever been in that situation where you just need a few minutes? My kids, often it's best to have them go to their room instead of continue being with the rest of the family for an hour or so. Jesus leaves to go on his own to find rest. But the crowds heard where he was headed, and they followed on foot from many towns. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped out of the boat. They've left the crowds. They've gone on the boat. They've gone to where the crowds knew where he was going. They saw the direction he was headed. There's only so many places he could go. And the crowds beat him to where he was going. His place of rest, his place of exhale, his place of recuperation. And as he steps out of the boat, the crowds are there. Some people in that situation may say, no, I just left all you people. Get out of here. I don't want anything to do with you. I need a little bit of space for myself. I need the recuperation that I need. I need to get away from you guys. That's why I got in my boat and left, was so you could stay there and I would go here and it would be all great. That's not what Jesus did. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them. He healed their sick. That evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so that they can go to the villages and buy foods for themselves." I'd be thinking the same thing. You've got more than 5,000 people that followed us to this place that was supposed to be our spot of rest. I'm exhausted. You're exhausted. Let's just send them out to an Airbnb, and they can go find food somewhere else. And then tomorrow morning, we'll have a little bit of reprieve, and we can go about this again. But Jesus said, that isn't necessary. You feed them. You? Me? I've got 3 cups of juice and 12 pieces of bread. Hope you're not very hungry. Bring them here, he said. Then he told the people to sit down on the grass. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up toward heaven, and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he gave the bread to the disciples, who distributed it to the people. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterward the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftovers. 5,000 men, women, and children were fed that day. Jesus recognizes the importance of being in relationship with people. Jesus recognizes that even though it's not the ideal situation, that it's not what he was hoping for. He was hoping to go back and take some rest and take some time to rehabilitate his disciples and himself. But there were people that had needs. There were people that he wanted to serve. There were people that he wanted to show love. And there was a moment where he could teach his disciples, even though it's not the greatest thing, it's not the best situation for us, even though it's not what we planned, even though it's not, just keep doing the next right thing. Jesus had the power of God within him. Jesus could speak directly to God. He could call down whatever he wanted to. Jesus could have come through and gone to Jerusalem and said, God, heal all the sick. Heal everyone. Bring everybody into completion. Bring everybody into full health. That's not what he did. He walked around. He met people at the side of the pool. He spoke one-on-one to them. Do you want to be healed? He had interactions with individual people. And even if they didn't know what it meant to be healed, even if they didn't know really what Jesus was even asking them, he continues to do the next right thing. Jesus acts in love. Jesus repairs relationships. He's intentional about it. He doesn't just leave the broken things to be, well, we'll figure that out later on, or it's not really that big of a deal. And then what happens is these things grow up and they get bigger and they get bigger. The biggest thing, in my opinion, for relationships is healthy communication. Speaking the things that are on our hearts and on our minds to those that we love the most. There's going to be issues in relationships. There's going to be times where somebody does something that you don't like. When Jesus and the disciples were together, the disciples asked Jesus, do you want us to call down fire? Jesus says, no. Why would you ever even think that? We come with love. Jesus sought relationships with marginalized. Jesus sought relationships with people that nobody else wanted to even talk to. A couple of weeks ago at HYM, we went over to Hilton East. And we sang a couple of songs, which they enjoyed. And as I talked to the coordinator said, well, do you want to do a craft, or what do you want to do for the time that you're here at Hilton East? And we thought about it a little bit, and what we settled on was we're going to play some worship music, and then the last 25, 35, whatever minutes of our time together, we're just going to talk to the residents. We're going to listen to their stories. We're going to hear who they are and how they've lived their life. Something about being in a Hilton East type home can be so lonely. You don't have the family connections that you once had. You don't have the friends coming to visit. You have the people that are living in that home with you, and you have the staff. And some people have a great family that comes in all the time, but it's just so often not that way. So for us as a youth group to go in and just to sit and listen. As we came back, we talked in the back room, and there were so many stories that the kids heard of life experiences, acronyms of what the Bills' name stands for. It's a really good one. Boy, I love losing Super Bowls. That wasn't from me either. That was from a resident at Hilton East. I'm just reporting the facts that were given. Jesus maintained relationships all the way through his life. And what's so important is that, are there times at which relationships are meant to be separated? I think that there are times where relationships should be separated. But more often, if we're able to open ourselves to have healthy communication, to be intentional about the ways that we go about our life, to live our lives out of love with the people that we love. And sometimes the people that we don't love. That's who God calls us to be. That's how we're to be in relationship with other people. God doesn't call us to be little hermits. I remember the top of Saranac Lake. What's the mountain we climb? Ampersand. And there's like a little plaque. The guy's not there. There's like a hermit lives here or something. Some guy that likes just solitude. It's not what God calls us to be. He doesn't call us to just go and know the good news and just go hide away for the rest of our being. He calls us to be in relationship with each other, with one another as we build each other up, as we grow together. And when the road gets bumpy, be intentional about coming back together. Think of the forgiveness that God has, the grace and the mercy that God exposes to us, that he gives to us, that he asks us to give to others. To live our lives in a way that is similar to what Jesus did. A life of love, a life of grace, a life of mercy. Forgiven and asking for forgiveness. Loving and asking for love in return. That's how we're meant to be made whole. Look for our relationships. Look for ways in which we can forgive others. Be intentional about how we can forgive others. How we can show compassion to others. We don't want to say constantly, well, you can continue to undermine who I am, and I'll forgive you and forgive you and forgive you. But it's that I forgive you. Now let's work together on how to be whole in relationship. Find ways in which you can improve the relationships around you today. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word, for your example of what it means to live with other people. The love that you showed towards your disciples, even when they were about to betray you. You always show the ability to come through with your profound love. Lord, as we go through life and we experience all different types of relationships, ask that you give us the courage to stand up for what is right. Ask that you give us the words in which to speak when someone needs to hear words of edification. I ask that you place forgiveness on our hearts when somebody does something against us. To continue to do the next right thing in our lives. That we can live a whole and healthy life in communion with others as we live our life for you. In your name we pray.